how to make a moist and delicious orange cake that's both gluten and dairy free. Now I've started off with 4 easy peelers that I've cooked in some boiling water for about 25 minutes and then drained and cooled them, so they're really tender. I'm going to pop those into a food processor to make a puree. I'm just going to remove the lid and lift out the blade, and that puree is all ready for when we need it. Next, I've got 5 egg yolks in a large bowl. I'm going to add some caster sugar. I'm going to use about half of this amount. I'm going to keep the rest to whisk with the egg whites. I'm just going to whisk it until it's really nice and creamy. So I'm just going to remove the beaters, and then using clean beaters, I'm going to whisk up the egg whites. And make sure the egg whites are really nice and stiff before you start adding the sugar. And then once your egg whites are stiff, with the beaters running, you can start whisking in that sugar. So that's our egg whites all ready. Now going back to the egg yolks, I'm going to add some ground almonds, 2 teaspoons of Waitrose signature spice, which has got a really fantastic scent and flavour, and it works really well with those oranges. In that goes. And just use a spatula to make sure you get it out, because this is going to give the orange cake that fantastic moist texture that we're after. And just give that a little stir around. So now I'm going to add the egg whites. Just add maybe a quarter of it, just to loosen the mixture. And then fold in the remainder. I'm just going to be quite gentle because it's the meringue that's going to make our cake so lovely and light. So the mixture's evenly combined. I'm just going to pop that aside. And here I've got a cake tin, and I've greased it and lined the base with parchment. I'm just going to spoon in that mixture, just pour it in, and just give it a little shake to level off the surface. And that'll need to bake now for about an hour until it's completely set and golden brown, and then leave it to cool in the tin. So my gorgeous cake has cooked and cooled, and it's ready now to be decorated. And here I've got 4 more of those easy peelers. I've just peeled them, and I'm just going to slice each one into 4 or 5 nice slices to go across the top. And do this just before you serve it so that the juices and the fantastic colours are really vibrant. And then just arrange those slices on top of the cake. And then to finish it off, a little drizzle of honey or maple syrup. On that goes, and then a final sprinkle of icing sugar. And there it is, all ready to slice and serve my spiced orange and almond cake.
You really want to impress with your baking, and my spiced marmalade bundt cake is guaranteed to get people talking. So I've already started by creaming together my butter and sugar in a stand mixer, and now it's ready to add the other ingredients too. I'm going to add plain flour into a small bowl, and I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, some ground almonds which give the cake a lovely texture, and then 1.5 teaspoons of signature spice, which is a really great spice blend for Christmas. I'm just going to mix this in until it's all well combined. The next thing I'm going to do is add the eggs into my sugar and butter mixture. So I'm going to add them one at a time, and in between each egg I'm going to add a tablespoon of flour to help stop the mixture from curdling. So that goes all into the mixer. I've added all of my eggs. The next thing to go in is all the remaining flour, so I'm going to tip that in one go. So you can really start to smell all the spices working in the mixture. And we're going to add orange marmalade next. The orange works really well with the Christmassy spices and reminds you of those festive times. And now the marmalade is well mixed in, I'm going to add the orange zest. The great thing about adding orange zest is it gives a real freshness to the batter. I'm just going to fold through little pieces of orange. The next thing to do is to place the mixture into my bundt tin. You can get bundt tins in all different designs, but this is my particular favourite because it's really cool how the icing drips down the ridges. I've I've coated the inside of this tin with a thick layer of butter and a light dusting of flour, and this means it comes out really easily when you turn it out. And then just use a spatula to spread it right into the corners. And now this is ready to go into the oven. I'm going to bake it for 40 to 45 minutes at 160 degrees. I've turned my cake out onto a cooling rack, and it looks so spectacular even as it is, but it will look even better with a marmalade glaze. So to do that, I've got some marmalade which I'm going to put into a pan. And to the marmalade I'm going to add orange juice and a little bit of icing sugar. And I'm going to turn the heat onto medium and leave it until all the lumps of marmalade have melted. You can see that the glaze is really bubbly now and there are no lumps remaining, so I'm going to take it off the heat and get ready to coat the whole cake in it. Now I'm going to use a pastry brush to brush the sticky glaze into all the edges of the cake. Completely covering the cake with glaze helps keep it really moist. Just pour over the last few chunks of orange. So now the cake is completely glazed, I'm going to get on with the icing. I've got my icing here, which is just a mixture of orange juice and icing sugar, and I'm going to use it to dribble all over the cake that runs in all of the ridges. So I'm going to pipe it over. This is a really great cake because you can enjoy it whilst it's still warm. So the last thing to do here is to grate the orange zest over the cake. It gives it a really nice freshness. I just put a few sprinkles of that over the top, and then it is ready to serve. So there you have it. My spiced marmalade bundt cake is perfect if you want something a little bit different this Christmas. Click subscribe for loads more great recipes. Christmas cake is an essential part of the festive season, and whether you don't like traditional fruitcake or you fancy something a little bit different, my chocolate and amaretto fruitcake is a great alternative. So to kick off, I'm going to melt my butter in a large saucepan, and then I'm going to add the sugar, some golden syrup, some mixed peel, and the next thing to go in is a great selection of dried fruits. I'm not really a fan of some of the traditional dried fruits you get in a Christmas cake, so I've swapped out the currants and sultanas for raisins, sour cherries, dates and prunes, which give it a really nice stickiness. And then I've got some amaretto, which gives it a lovely almondy flavour. Then I'm going to put this onto a high heat and leave it to melt until all the sugar is starting to caramelise and the butter has come up around the fruit. So it's simmered down nicely and you can see it's a nice thick and glossy paste. So I'm going to transfer it into a glass bowl. So my mixture is now cool, so it's time to add the eggs. It's really important that you leave this till it's completely cool or the eggs are going to scramble. So the eggs are all mixed in, so I'm going to start combining the dry ingredients. I've got flour in a small bowl. I'm going to add ground almonds, a teaspoon of mixed spice, which gives it a really nice Christmassy feel. And then I've got my cocoa powder, which makes the cake really rich. So I'm going to add the flour into the dried fruit mixture and then fold it together until you get a really nice thick batter. Now this is a tin that I prepared earlier. It's got 2 layers of baking parchment around the edge and on the bottom, and then the outside is covered in brown paper. It stops the cake from browning too quickly on the outside, which is important when you're cooking a cake for a long time. And then use the spatula to just spread it out so you get it a nice even top. And then this is ready to go into the oven at 150 degrees for about 1 hour and 3/4 to 2 hours. So the cake is completely cool, and the next thing I'm going to do is feed it with a little bit of alcohol. So I'm just using a skewer to pierce little holes all over the cake. And then I'm going to feed it with a tablespoon or 2 of amaretto. So now I'm going to move on to the marzipan. Lots of people think marzipan is really difficult to make, but it's actually so simple, and I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm just taking ground almonds, and they go into a food processor. And then I've got some golden caster sugar, icing sugar. Now I'm adding cocoa powder. If you want to make a plain marzipan, you can leave this out, but I think it adds a really nice richness that works well with the cake. And add 1 egg, and then 1 egg yolk, and pulse the mixture together until it forms a nice ball. So you can see this has come together into a lovely ball. I'm going to wrap this in cling film and put it into the fridge until I'm ready to use it. For a really Christmassy finish, I'm going to decorate my Christmas cake to look like a Christmas pudding. So I'm going to brush the whole of my cake with a mixture of cherry jam and amaretto, which I've gently heated together. It will help the marzipan to stick on really well. I've rolled out my marzipan between 2 layers of cling film. This helps keep it really smooth, it makes it easy to move around and stops it from drying out. So I'm going to peel the top layer off, turn a sheet of marzipan over the top of the cake, and then gently press the marzipan into the sides of the cake. Remove the cling film layer. Just use a sharp knife to get rid of any excess marzipan. Now ready to cover the cake, I've rolled my fondant icing out on a surface lightly dusted with icing sugar. And now I'm going to use a sharp knife to cut a wiggly line through the fondant, which should replicate the sauce dripping down a Christmas pudding. And then I'll peel away the bottom piece of icing, and we're not going to use this bit. I'm going to use a little bit of water to brush the top half. The water helps the fondant fuse to the marzipan. So I'm going to lift up my fondant sheet and drape it over the cake. I'm just going to run a knife around the outside of the cake to trim off any large pieces of fondant that you don't want. Smooth the edges with an icing smoother to get a really professional finish. And I've made some tiny holly leaves from some green fondant and some little berries from a red fondant. I'm just going to apply a tiny bit of water to the back and stick them right into the centre of the Christmas pudding. So just arrange the last berry on the top of the cake and then you're good to go. So there you have it. Full of festive flavours, my chocolate and amaretto Christmas cake is perfect if you want to serve a cake with a twist this Christmas. Click subscribe for loads more great recipes.
I'm going to show you how to make a super spooky but very simple Halloween centrepiece. It is my Creepy Creatures tray bake. Now to begin with, I've got some flour in a bowl. I'm going to add some butter, some brown sugar, a little bit of vanilla, some cocoa and 4 eggs. And it's really simple. All I'm going to do is beat it together with an electric whisk. And I've got some courgettes here, and I've coarsely grated them and squeezed out any excess juice and pop that in, and nobody will know that they're in there, but they'll add a lovely flavour and texture and a bit of moisture to our cake. And then just whisk it all together. There we are. Now I've got a little roasting tin here that I've lined with parchment, and just get the cake mixture into there. And then just level off the surface. And this is a great cake for preparing in advance. You could even freeze it if you wanted to. And I'm going to bake this now for 40 minutes until it's risen and firm to the touch. So my cake has baked and cooled now, so it's ready for the chocolate icing. I've just turned it out onto a piece of parchment paper, and in this bowl here I've got some milk chocolate that I've melted. I'm just going to beat in a little bit of butter. And then just pour the mixture over the top, and then with a palette knife just spread it over. You can just let it drip down over the edges, and once you've got a nice roughly even coating, just leave it to set for a few minutes and we'll be ready to decorate it. So the icing is set and it's time for the fun part, decorating our cake. So I'm going to start with a cobweb. So I'm just going to pipe long wiggly lines and then join them together to make our cobweb. There we go. Now for the spider, I'm going to use a large blackberry that I've cut in half. Just pop him on the web. And then I've got some strawberry laces here that I've just been cut into small pieces, and we're just going to bend those into little legs. Position them on the spider. Now for some more bugs. I've got some grapes, green grapes that I've cut in half. I'm going to pop a few of those there. A little gang of them. And then with the green icing, just a few little legs. Now I'm using mostly fruity decorations, but you could go to town and use little jelly beans or other little colourful sweeties. You can always ask the kids to get involved with decorating their own cake. Right, now for some eyes, I'm going to use red eyes, so just a couple on each of my little grape bugs. And then I think we need a couple on that spider. And then while I've got the red in my hand, I'm just going to do a couple of like little wriggly worms coming in from the side. And just to finish it off, I've got a bat that we've cut out of a piece of courgette. You could decorate the bat with black icing if you like, and in he goes. And there we have it, all ready for Halloween. It is my creepy creatures tray bake.